Before we begin, if you value serious, deeply researched history that looks beyond battles and slogans, consider subscribing to the Survival Record. This channel exists to preserve the kinds of lessons that are easy to lose when history is reduced to timelines and maps. Most people remember World War II winters through the lens of armies, Stalingrad, Bastogne, the Ardennes, the frozen corpses of soldiers caught without supplies. What's far less discussed is that for millions of civilians, winter was not a temporary campaign problem. It was a recurring, grinding condition that lasted for years. Families in Eastern Europe, the Balkans, Scandinavia, and occupied Western Europe did not get through a single winter. They endured 4, 5, sometimes 6 winters shaped by occupation, rationing, scorched earth policies, and collapsed infrastructure. Survival was not heroic or dramatic. It was technical, domestic, and deeply strategic. And in many cases, the methods civilians developed quietly influenced post-war survival doctrine, civil defense planning, and even modern preparedness culture. One of the first lessons families learned was that heat mattered more than comfort or tradition. In much of Eastern Europe, wartime winters forced families to abandon long-standing cultural expectations about home life. Central heating systems failed early due to fuel shortages or sometimes deliberate sabotage during retreats. Coal deliveries became irregular or, even stopped entirely. Families responded by consolidating living space, sometimes crowding multiple generations into a single room that could be heated with minimal fuel. Furniture was dismantled and burned. Wooden floors, doors, and even staircases were removed, plank by plank, over multiple winters. This was not desperation in the cinematic sense. It was calculation. Families learned to reduce cubic space rather than chase impossible heating goals. German occupation authorities often underestimated how quickly civilians would adapt in this way, assuming cold would break morale. Instead, it reshaped domestic architecture into something closer to a bunker mentality, where efficiency replaced comfort. Post-war civil defense manuals in several Eastern Bloc states later echoed these civilian adaptations almost word for word. Food survival depended less on ration cards and more on parallel systems no government could fully control. Rationing systems existed everywhere, but they were rarely sufficient in winter when caloric needs increased and transportation networks deteriorated. Families survived by constructing informal food networks that operated beneath official structures. Urban households maintained ties with rural relatives, exchanging labor, manufactured goods, or favors for potatoes, grains, and preserved meats. In occupied Poland and Ukraine, entire neighborhoods coordinated travel schedules so that one person risking a rural trip could supply multiple families. Preservation techniques became more conservative and, less wasteful than pre-war norms. Pickling, fermentation, and drying were extended well beyond traditional recipes, often using substitutes that, honestly, would have been rejected in peacetime. Even potato peels and beet tops were preserved. These practices weren't born of ignorance or superstition. They were informed responses to supply instability. Modern survivalist emphasis on decentralized food sourcing and preservation actually owes more to these civilian systems than to military ration science. Clothing became a layered survival system rather than a seasonal wardrobe. Winter clothing shortages were acute, particularly after the second year of the war. Wool, leather, and fur were requisitioned for military use. Families adapted by repurposing civilian garments into layered systems optimized for insulation rather than appearance. Old blankets were sewn into coats. Straw, paper, and even dried grass were used as insulation inside footwear and jackets. These materials trapped air effectively and could be replaced cheaply. This improvisation directly contradicted pre-war assumptions about clothing quality and durability. What really mattered was not longevity, but, adaptability. Clothing had to be modified repeatedly as materials degraded. Fuel scarcity forced families to become careful managers of time as well as resources. When fuel is scarce, when you heat matters as much as how you heat. Families learned to synchronize daily activities around limited warmth. Cooking, washing, and social gatherings were clustered into short windows when fires were lit. Understanding how civilians survived World War II winters really matters because it reframes survival as something learned, shared, and refined over time, not as a test of toughness or just luck. These families, well, they were not exceptional individuals. They were ordinary people who were forced to become systems thinkers under pressure. If you believe these lesser-known survival histories deserve to be remembered and studied, go ahead and subscribe to the Survival Record and, share this video with others who value serious historical analysis. These stories are not just about the past. They're really about how humans endure when institutions fail, and honestly, why that knowledge still matters today.